Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honors, and glories to Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai Bashem, Rakakwadash, and the honors to the apostles and elders of great milestone. The salutations to the hopeful Jemai Chicago, and coming back with you with another lesson. What you see here on the news, all right, is basically a lot of propaganda, all right, because over the past days, all right, we were hearing on the news about, the U.S. Basically U.S. and the small hats are basically, striking at Iran. All right, Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz. All right, the U.S. and Iran try to come up with a peace deal, peace talks. U.S. and small hats. Then all of a sudden, uh, they come to a peace. All right, they basically were seizing or firing. They were ceasing firing for a little while, but all of a sudden, the small hats are now striking Lebanon. All right. And right now, what Esau is doing is that he's using propaganda, pushing a narrative as if Iran wants to continue this war, but really, in overall reality, all right, because Esau, he has used propaganda in the past, and currently, he's using it a whole lot of it right now. And basically what propaganda is, it's pretty straightforward, but propaganda is the deliberate, systematic dissemination of biased or misleading information to shape perceptions and manipulate cognitions and direct behavior, often by promote a cause. And that's what Esau is basically is doing right now. He's using misleading information that he's pushing on the news to promote his own cause, to continue on striking Iran, all right, which is basically having Iran. Okay. As of right now, all right. The U.S. that's right, and NATO even offered the U.S. help. But hey, the U.S. Basically declined that shit. You know what I mean? It says, as of April 2026, Donald Trump rejected a late offer of help from NATO regarding the securing of the Strait of Hormuz, calling the alliance useless for not assisting early. And we all was NATO refused. Now you're useless. Happening, all right. The reason why NATO is basically offering help is because they are starting to see that their economy is deteriorating because they're not getting their oil, they're not getting their energy. That's coming to a halt, and now they're pushing forth rationing, all right, over there in Europe. All right, they're rationing of fuel. They're basically going through an energy crisis right now, and it's only going to get worse. But this also ties in with the fact of, later on down the road, all right, this is causing the beast to hate the whore, all right, which that whore is America. And you can see that the U.S. is using a whole lot of deception, or a whole lot of deceit to basically keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. Because really, all right, them small hats, all right, these elites, Esau, all right, they really truly want the Strait of Hormuz closed for an agenda of theirs, all right, a new world order, basically crashing the world economy and implementing a new monetary system by the way of the RFID microchip, which will be implemented globally. All right, and hey, prophecy is speaking loud and clear. All right, it's no longer tearing anymore. You see these things happening. All right, Habakkuk 2:1. It says, "I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And the Lord answered me and said, Write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it." And that's what we're doing currently as of right now. You're seeing the war of Armageddon that's taking place over there. All right, the Northern Army is getting shipped over there. All right, to go fight the war of Armageddon. All right, that's spoken in the scriptures. Over there in the valley of Jehoshaphat, the Levant, which that ties into Joel 2:20. All right, it says verse 3: "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but the end shall speak and not lie, though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, and will not tarry." And that's right. These prophecies are basically speaking. All right, and you can see how later down the road, all right, as Esau is trying to do away with this current monetary system, all right, he is about to implement the RFID microchip, all right. But first, they gotta really crash this economy, all right. They gotta really crash this economy, and yeah, it's gonna get rough. It's going to get rough. What the fuck? Why did it change title? Well, basically, it's on the news. It says war, Iran war live updates. The U.S. blockade around Strait of Hormuz will last long as it takes, Hexas says. And that's right. These Edomites, they don't want, uh, they don't want a ceasefire. Right? These Edomites, they don't want a ceasefire because they basically are, they're basically stringing their own allies along to basically support the U.S. economy later down the road. Hey, this is the nature of Esau, right? Yeah, they still drawn swords, right? Right? Yeah, it may seem like they want a peace talk. They want to make deals with Iran, but hey, they're basically using psychological warfare against them. All right, by keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed, so that the U.S. and the small hats can be benefited by their own economy when NATO reaches out for help, because they need oil, they need energy, they need fuel. Psalms 55:21. His words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart, and his words were softer than oil. Yet were they drawn swords. That's what of his mouth further than butter. These talks, but really, they have a whole other agenda that they want to accomplish. All right. Because hey, you look at the U.S. national debt, it's way up there. It's pretty fucked up. It's probably 40 trillion right now. Well, I was getting there. Hey, dang, like, you can see that U.S. is really trying to benefit from this war. Not only the U.S., but the U.S. and the small hats. It says, Habakkuk 2:6, shall not all these take a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that layeth himself with thick clay. And thick clay is going into heavy debt, as in real heavy debt, right? Especially now, since the Strait of Hormuz is closed. Hey, you know, either way, the U.S. is still in debt with, is still going to be in debt with dealing with NATO, because hey, that's NATO and the EU oil that's getting seized over there, all right, at the Strait of Hormuz. All right, they need that Strait of Hormuz open so that they can uh, operate, so they can go back to the U.S. as well. All right, and he's going to continue to ride this out. He's going to continue to basically have the Strait of Hormuz closed. All right, because really that's what the U.S. and the small hats want. All right, they really truly want the Strait of Hormuz closed so that this is part of their agenda to implement the MOTB. God damn, you can see the split, all right, between the because NATO and the EU are basically splitted against the U.S. All right. Now let's hope this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praises, honors, and glories to Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai Shalom.